If tarot has ever left you feeling like the cards made sense but still didn't quite know what to do next, this conversation is for you. Earlier, I shared why tarot readings can feel muddy in the first place. If you haven't seen that and are curious about it, I will link it here somewhere. But you don't need it for this one, because this is where things get practical. I want to give you something you can actually use, not perfect wording or strict rules, but a way to rethink your questions so you can ask them more clearly. The goal here is not to memorize questions, but to create them. And a question that leads to clear readings usually does 3 things at once. I don't think about this consciously anymore, but it's an underlying pattern. The question names the situation. It places you inside it, and it makes clear what kind of help you're asking for. If one of those pieces is missing, the reading often stays muddy. Let me show you what I mean. A very common starting point in a question is, what's going to happen with this relationship? The question comes from uncertainty, but it also asks the cards to decide the ending while the situation is still unfolding. That makes a clear answer almost impossible. If you rephrase it to, what is the current dynamic in this relationship and what would support a shift? Now the cards know where to look. They can describe what's actually happening, how you are involved, and what could change instead of trying to predict an outcome. You could even go a step further and ask about a specific direction. What would support a shift towards a romantic relationship, for example? Same situation, but very, very different guidance. Or, how do they feel about me? That question pulls all the force to the other person. Some readers don't even answer this question because it leaves the person asking out of it. If you move it to, what pattern is playing out between us right now, the reading comes back into your hands. Now it's about what you can do, not what they might feel. If you transfer that to work or purpose, a question like, am I on the right path? Is very understandable, but also very broad. And I asked that myself plenty of times. Don't take this as anything else. It asks for a yes or no answer, kinda, even though most situations at work are more complex than that. Tarot isn't built for simple yes or no answers. The cards don't work like switches that flip to yes or no. They show process, influences, and tension over time. When we force them into a binary answer, a lot of useful information gets flattened or completely lost. If you rephrase it to, what is influencing my sense of direction in my work right now? The card can focus on very concrete factors: pressure, fear, motivation, expectations, values. The things that are actively shaping how clear or unclear this path feels. Another very common one I've heard, why am I stuck in my career? This can explain why you feel stuck, but it doesn't help you move forward. If you shift that to, what is keeping me stuck and what would help me move forward, the reading stops explaining the problem and starts pointing towards movement. Or in moments of emotional overwhelm, people tend to ask, why does everything feel so hard? That question is valid and honest, but it asks the cards to just sit in this emotion of overwhelm. It reflects the weight back to you, sometimes even amplifies it, without giving you a way to relate to it differently. How do you feel about rephrasing it to, what is the main theme influencing me right now? Or What would support me through this current phase? Then the role of the card changes. Instead of confirming how heavy everything feels, they begin to organize the experience. They help you see what this moment is actually about, where the pressure is coming from, and what would make it more bearable. The intensity doesn't disappear, but it becomes understandable. And that alone can make it way easier to move through. In all these examples, the better question doesn't sound more spiritual or more clever. It's just more specific. My check before pulling cards for myself is, does the question name the situation, include me, and invite guidance rather than judgment? If the answer is yes, the question is good to go. And if you don't know what to ask at all, it usually means the situation hasn't settled yet. And those moments, questions about themes, influences, or support are often the most grounded place to start. Your goal is always clarity, so that the cards don't have to guess what you are asking, and you don't have to guess what they are saying. At this point, there are a few questions that almost always come up, so I want to answer them in advance. What if I'm already emotional when I'm asking? Feeling emotional doesn't invalidate a reading. You don't need to be calm or neutral before reading. You just need to notice where your emotions sit. If you are overwhelmed, confused, or anxious, that becomes part of the situation. That just means questions about support, themes, or what would help you tend to work much better than trying to force clarity you don't have yet. Another common question I have had in the past: what if I rephrase the question and the reading still feels vague? Sometimes that's simply because the situation itself isn't settled yet. In those cases, the cards don't have one clear answer to give, because there isn't one yet. Other times the question is fine, but you're doing too much work for a single pull, or 3 cards, right? That's when narrowing the focus help. Ask about what's blocking clarity, what you're not seeing yet, or what the next small step is. Because sometimes the honest answer is that this isn't a one-question situation at all. Some topics need a spread with clear positions. I'm mostly talking about quick, focused pulls up until here, but not every situation will fit into that format. I also get the question, how many questions should I ask in one reading? Well, the question usually comes up when people start to feel scattered or overwhelmed. In my experience, one good question is often enough. You can ask follow-ups, but they should grow out of the first answer and not replace it. When readings get muddy, it's often because we're asking 5 different questions at once and pulling cards faster than we are integrating what they are saying. But once again, if you feel like you want to ask 20 things at once, perhaps you need a spread. What if the cards give clear guidance that I don't like? Clear does not mean comfortable. If the answer feels challenging, that doesn't mean the reading failed. It means the question did its job. You don't have to act on everything immediately. Sometimes the work is just sitting with what was shown until you're ready. And another last question I get sometimes: is it okay if my question changes once I see the cards? Yes. That is responding to the deck, responding to the cards, as long as you are not pulling cards just to override an answer you do not want. Adjusting your question is part of how understanding deepens and how you learn for future pulls. But with this little part, don't pull cards just to override an answer you don't want or don't like. If this inspired you to reshape your own questions, I would love to see you again. Please leave a like and a sub if you want to support this work. And I would also love to hear from you in the comments. You can share one question you're working with or any thoughts that came up for you listening to this. And in the next part, we will take this one step further and look at what happens when a single question isn't enough, how structure and spreads can give complex situations the space they need. Take care and thank you for sharing space.